Welcome to the Resilience Sucks podcast, brought to you by the Adaptability Movement. I'm Ben.
And I'm Dan.
And we're here to give you resources and tools to help you go from a state of surviving to thriving in life.
Resilience sucks the life out of you. And while it's a necessary skill, it's one that we don't want to spend too much time in or we run out of capacity. We're here to talk to you more about how to adapt and find the opportunity in change so you can really go about thriving in your own life.
Welcome to another episode of Resilience Sucks, and today I've got with me Scott Perry from Switch Start Scale and Cedar Valley Startup. So Scott has actually been very generous with feeding into our business recently with offering some mentoring and support through what you and your wife Wendy do through Switch Start Scale. Trying to get my words together and not just run them into each other. Scott's been generous enough as well to come on the podcast today and talk a little bit about your journey and the story behind you starting out within a plumbing business, which you still run, as well as now being a go-to for entrepreneurs and people that are in their own startups and trying to sort of form a pathway in their own business. So, Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, and thank you for the introduction. It's a really nice way to be described as the go-to. So I'll have to run with that one and use it every now and then.
Absolutely, and I think within South Australia, I think it's actually pretty well known that you go and see the Perrys. It's either you or Wendy, and we're lucky to have an experience with both of you. So and thankful for what you're offering us. So glad to be able to share that with our listeners and people watching the podcast today.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit more about what your journey was in terms of forming your pathway to where you are now and offering this support to other businesses, as well as where that all started, being a plumber and then going into your own sort of startup and your own business and how that's shaped you.
Yeah. Well, I suppose my wife and I had kids very young. To give you an idea, we're about to be grandparents and I'm not 50 yet. So life was kind of tough, but we both started our businesses quite young. Yeah. So I started in plumbing. Wendy started a business called Workforce Blueprint. And we've come together, worked together on a number of things and worked separately as well for many, many years. Wendy was lucky enough maybe 3.5 years ago to win a contract with the federal government to be the Entrepreneurship Facilitator for Western Adelaide, where we're sitting right now. And in July of this year, July 1st, we started a contract with Cedar Valley Startups, which is a self-employment assistance program. So it's funded by the federal government and people can get some help and support for 12 months to start their own business. Awesome. Coaching, mentoring. Some people are actually eligible for income support as well. So it's a really good program to run, really good to be part of, and just that working with people to help them go from the position they're in to starting a business, which will change your life in some way. Yeah. Being part of helping them make that change and change your life to something better rather than something that is more stress and more difficult and potentially not what they want is really just a really privileged position to be in. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So when Wendy won, I was working with Wendy for a few years before, just bringing real practical sort of advice to businesses. Being there for so long and basically messing it up a number of times. Hopefully helping people avoid some of the mistakes that we've made. So 1st of July, formally, I've taken on both of those roles at 20%. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So I guess coming back to what you said about when people first get into business on their own, because most people want to go, oh, I want control of my own destiny. I want to do this my way. I want to have an impact. I want to stop sort of going to work for the man kind of thing and feeding someone else's retirement instead of your own. And then they get to that position and they're like, oh wow, I don't know what I thought I knew, and this is way harder than I thought, and maybe it was easy just collecting a paycheck every fortnight. But those of us that sort of fumble our way through it and keep adapting and persist through those challenges, we generally kind of build some momentum, and there'll be ups and downs, and there'll be things that challenge us to go, is this where I'm meant to be? But I think it builds a conviction within you, which is that we're constantly learning. Like life is learning, like it's an ongoing process, and that the more that we do this, the better chance we have of not just surviving, but actually moving on to something which feels like thriving and feels more in alignment with what we care about and the reason we got into business in the first place. How hard is it to support people to get beyond that initial hump? Because with us coming from a sports background and coaching, there's often this thing where there's the people that just love sport and they'll push themselves through anything because they understand the delayed gratification. And then there's the people that don't want to break through that first hurdle of pain or discomfort or whatever it is that's limiting them in pushing further to discover that in the first place. And because they don't have that ability to delay their gratification, they give up. And so we see that in business, we see that in sport. It's not, limited to one particular area, but what is it or how is it that you have navigated that or helped other people navigate it?
I think the first thing I probably want to drill down on a little bit is you're saying, I can't remember the exact words you used, but you want to do something that's more fulfilling, something you're passionate about. And the advice I'd give to anyone that's watching this is if that's your reason for going into business, great. If you're thinking that you're going to go into business because you don't want to have a boss, you're in for probably the rudest shock of your life, because instead of having one boss now, one person you're answering to, one person that's going to take the flak from 5, 10, 15, 50, 100 customers, in terms of which priority that they're gonna allocate your time to, you've now got 50, 100, even if it's 2 or 3 bosses. Each customer is effectively your boss. I mean, if you follow the revenue stream, even if you're a not-for-profit, you want to do a social enterprise, whatever, if the money's not coming, your organisation, your enterprise is in serious trouble. But you've got more bosses than one. You don't have one boss anymore. So I think that's probably the starting point, is actually realising just what you're walking in for, what you're walking into, I should say. If you don't get that right, then you're starting at a place where you're going to have to be very resilient, because you're going to be disappointed a lot. So I think it's really understanding what people are in for, what the journey is going to be like, the challenges they're going to face, so that people can plan, adapt, instead of having to just be resilient and grin and bear it.
Absolutely. It's making an informed decision, right? Around which path do I want to take? Am I trying to escape something over here and this is my path?
That's right.
Or I'm choosing something that I want to move towards, which is what you're describing. And I just laugh when you say about that, having more bosses, because it really is you have to be an expert communicator. You have to be able to build relationships, maintain relationships, to understand the concept of mutual benefit, rather than this idea of leverage, where I've got to go out and I've got to leverage all of these people to get something for me. It's about, well, how do I go out and deliver value? And then that exchange of value becomes your income. It becomes the thing that elevates your business and allows you to do more of that to live your purpose. Not everyone gets that, and that's okay. But you've got to be open to that. You've got to be open to being challenged and to be open to growth. Otherwise, it's probably a quick pathway back into the workforce.
And you're hitting on some really important topics around that, particularly really early stage startup of business. The exchange of value that you just touched upon there is one that we often see as being the major stumbling block to people, thriving in their business. So it's interesting that this adaptability, you kind of, until you start to talk about it, you don't realise how much it plays. You sort of have to start your business at a point where you're maybe discounting, maybe doing a few bits and pieces here and there just to get some runs on the board. It's different with a business like plumbing, for example. You go and you do a job and people know what they're kind of getting. When you're in adaptability movement, you're kind of in a business where you're promising someone that you're going to make a change and they don't know what that change is going to be. So, for a business like yours, you have to kind of be willing to maybe demonstrate what you do, so that you can actually get those testimonials and people can say, okay, this works and that's what I'm buying. But then if you can't adapt to actually putting out there the value that you create and realising that value and asking people for that money, then what you'll find is that your business is again in a lot of trouble. So we keep coming back to adaptability. You can be, and we talk about that resilience sucks. People that are in that place just going, okay, I'm keep doing this for nothing. People are saying it's fantastic, and then when I actually ask them for money, they're used to saying, well, hang on, you did it for free last month. So just getting to that point where you've got the confidence to do that. Again, knowing that it's going to happen, maybe you can put some strategies in place to not be there. But adaptability, understanding that value exchange, and getting to that point where that value is going, coming back in, not just going out, is a real struggle for most people in that startup phase. So
Beautifully put. It's something that Ben and I have absolutely had to work through around our discomfort around asking for remuneration for what we do. In a utopian world where there is no money and we all operate out of goodwill, like we'd be happily out there doing what we're doing still. But we got families and we've got a future that we're planning for, and so it really is about being an entrepreneur, being in your own business it's a mirror that's constantly in front of you, just reflecting all of those discomforts, those perceived weaknesses, like the stuff that you didn't want to address that's now right there, and going, well, welcome buddy, it's either now or it's never, because otherwise you're out in your bum. So I've found that.
Rest assured, you're not alone.
No, absolutely
you and Ben
not.
are not alone in that place.
No.
It's like, and you're probably you're probably in more company than you realise, because there's a lot of people that will kind of never admit to that. So
I think it's the beauty of it though. Like you have to go through all of those emotions of self-doubt, of frustration, of anxiety. Like there's all of this stuff that's going to come up that's going to feel uncomfortable. And if you're not willing to be open to that, well then it's not for you. It's not for you. Not yet anyway. No. But one of the big things that has been helpful is that we've constantly sought out mentorship. We've sought out people to help keep us accountable. We've absolutely leveled up our own communication, both with people that we work with, but with each other, so that we are living that vulnerability with each other. We're having difficult conversations, or what people would perceive as difficult conversations sometimes around, deep-seated values that we want to live by. And when things deviate from that, we need to go, well, is this really where we want to take things together? Because, I'm not comfortable with that, or you're not comfortable with that. And it's been a phenomenal lesson for me in, I guess, how much you can evolve a relationship, how much you can trust someone, because of that openness, because of that willingness to hear each other out, and to make a collaborative decision, based on your vision together. Which, I mean, that it's not limited to business. Like you're talking about having children very early in a relationship and then working together. Like that comes with challenges itself. And I imagine you guys probably are implementing a lot of that upper level communication, skill set, because otherwise you wouldn't be where you are right now.
And I think a lot of it is just realising, not getting too attached to things that don't matter. Whether it be how the fridge is sorted, or the painting of the colour of the walls, or how you put some marketing material out, or you've just got to go, okay, well, it's got to be collaborative, and that means that it's not always going to be exactly me. So particularly I don't know, being obviously some of Wendy's communication will perhaps be a bit more touchy-feely than I would put out, and mine might be a bit too harsh for her sometimes. But you just kind of need to say, okay, well, we need to appeal to a broader audience, and and the way that works, the way that fits is fine. Certain clients that you'd sort of put more effort into, or you might need to sort of say, hey, this kind of isn't working unless we've got to change up what we're doing. One of you might be particularly attached to trying to get that might see potential. It's like, okay, well, you can stay there, and I'll my vision there doesn't seem to align with the client so much. So it's just having that, like you said, it's difficult conversations. But if you can really drill down on what's important and what's not, then a lot of those conversations are a lot less difficult than they.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I said. Perceived is difficult, right? Like we have this discomfort around it's literally comes from our own discomfort. We go, well, I don't want to tell Scott that that he's upset me, or that what we're doing is not in line with what we talked about doing, because that makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So then I anticipate or hope that you will then somehow magically know that yourself and come to me, and then when you don't, I get frustrated or bitter or resentful. It's like, we can nip that straight in the bud by going, oh, I've noticed something. Can I invite you to chat about it? Like, could we just, can we talk through this? Like, it actually becomes so simple and so obvious once you practice it, but until you do, you're constantly trying to escape from something again rather than move towards the thing that you want.
Yeah.
And so I love what you said about, we talked briefly off camera about that attachment and about the ability to let go, because we have, it sort of almost fits with expectations. Like we put this expectation of what business should be, or what a relationship would be, or what it is to be a father. And when we do that, we kind of shut ourselves off to new growth. We say, well, that's the only way it can be. And when it's not that, we're either beating down on the people that we feel are instigating that, or we're beating down ourselves for not being able to create that, rather than being open, inquisitive, exploring something and kind of discovering what's possible, that really open growth, abundant mindset.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, with, the mindset, and sometimes it's just being in the moment too and appreciating it for what it is. What we find is that, a lot of people are it's good to really drill down and investigate these things, but it needs to be concentrated and, maybe put into a box, and you need to be able to just get out there and live it and do it and enjoy it as well, rather than just being, constantly analysing what you're doing. So, and I suppose part of that is just making sure that you do spend that time, analyse it, think about your growth, your mindset, how you want to live your life, the conversations you want to have, and then try and change the habits rather than just think about it and go back to doing what you were.
Yeah. I've noticed recently, like, there's a lot of, I'm big on action. I'm big on taking the first 2 steps towards something. I think that is what it is to be adaptable. It's not over planning. It's not over analysing. It's like, because I've been there.
Yeah.
Like we've learnt this stuff firsthand, and because it's a chance to test an idea. It's a chance to sort of be back in the moment, doing something, working out if that is the right direction for you, or recalibrating and then repivoting to something else without being overly emotional about it, without being attached to it, like we were saying before. And so it's like, how quickly can you test an idea? So absolutely reflect. Like, I think reflection is one of the greatest tools we have to develop self-awareness and to be able to gauge where we're at. But once we know that, once we quantify that, where to from here? Like, how do we then progress back towards our vision, the thing that we're moving forward towards, not trying to escape something? And the way to do that to me is to test. It's to go, well, let's get back out there and do something, because you can also
step back and have a look at it from
zoom out.
So you can see more of the situation as it is. We find that's the case with a lot of clients, particularly in your space, and like I said, plumbing might be different. If you're selling a physical product, you put it on the shelf, people can see it, they can pick it up, they can take it home, they kind of know what they get. But if particularly for those in that space, in that business space of trying to make change or whatever it would be, stepping back and having a look at it, because people get so fixed and passionate about the solution, about the product, about the offering, about how it gets sold, and that's really the kind of end result.
Yeah.
And one of the analogies we like to use is, when we find that people are in that space, they can actually step back and have a look at it from a broader perspective. They'll realise that if Uber applied the same methodology, getting fixed on the destination, they'd never get anywhere, because you call for an Uber, what's the first question they ask? What is the first thing you have to put into the app? It's like your current position.
Yeah.
And we find that in this space, if you're only focused on the destination and not the current position, whether that be for yourself or for someone you're trying to influence or sell to, then you go straight there and you don't pick yourself up and take yourself there, or you don't pick your future client up and take them there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
It's great perspective. So I'm just checking to make sure I'm mic'd, so I've done that before. it really is great perspective, because we do focus a lot on going, well, what are you moving towards? Because so many people aren't moving towards anything. They're just trying to escape something that they're uncomfortable about. They didn't want to live that lifestyle. They didn't want to be in that job. So they just, well, anything's better than that, right? And then there's the people that are going, they're very focused on a goal, like it has to be like this. This is what, and like you said, it's the perfect product solution, right? Or the perfect service solution. But again, like you have to have context. You have to be able to put that into some form of thing that makes it relevant. And you can't have context or relevance unless you know where you're at.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's constantly changing. So then we need to come back to that practice and that habit of reflection. And it's going, well, how often are we reviewing these sort of things? How often are we giving ourselves an opportunity to check on, where we are in that vision process? Because this is just it's a picture of where we think we're going, and that'll need to be reviewed over time as well.
Well, the world's going to change. Your values are going to change. I mean, the thing is, it just might not be what you want when you get there.
Yeah.
Or as you get closer to it, you might realise, hang on, this isn't quite right for me. So, yeah. So.
Well, you started off out in plumbing, and now still doing that, but you're also now advising entrepreneurs. We started out in sports performance, and we're now out there doing personal growth and mindset and well-being type stuff. So, it changes. And you go, well, we were doing it in a way that was very holistic with our sports performance, but it was limiting us in terms of who we could reach. So if we pivot and we change that and we drill down on the thing that really drives us, then we express ourselves as the adaptability movement. Yeah. And we can be broader in who we reach, but we can be really narrow in the value that we offer to make sure it's unique and it's high impact.
And it's also being, I don't know if it's even vulnerable enough to share. I think it's just, being brave enough to share, where you are, what else you do.
When we get together at these networking events, right, the first thing is really, it's a bit of a beat the drum kind of thing, isn't it? It's like, how are you going? Oh yeah, really good, got this going on, got that, I'm hoping this is going to come through. Or it's the opposite, it's like, oh yeah, things are really tough, and it's like, where's the middle ground? I'm just going, look, we've had some wins, some losses, this feels really cool to be moving towards that. Man, we had a setback that we had to work around, and just letting go of all of that. What it has to look like to just be who you are and to connect at a deeper level, which allows for connection and growth.
But even your business, even your previous business or work experience, it's very easy to sort of say, okay, I don't want to tell people I'm a plumber because I'm advising in business now. I want to be a business person. I want to be I want to help people, public speak or whatever it would be. I just want to push that away from me. And you don't necessarily need to, because a lot of learning comes from there, and it's also part of that. Hey, if I'm going to take you to this particular destination that we're thinking about over here, I kind of need to let you know that I know how to get to where you are, or I've been where you are, so I can pick you up and take you there. And I think that's a key thing. In this space, a lot of us are saying, hey, I don't want to let people know that I messed this up. I don't want to let people know that I was a plumber or I was a tradesman or I think my first job was, refereeing basketball. Right. Then, I did a bit of pumping gas in a self-serve, not a self-serve, a we serve you kind of petrol station. Right. Trying to put a litre of oil in people, try to sell people a litre of oil in their car and whatever. I think people will respect that, hey, if you've come from here, you can show me the way.
Agreed.
But, you see so many people out there going, no, I just, they paint this picture of they're just incredibly successful and have never seen,
There's an endless amount of Instagram accounts and LinkedIn accounts that will contact you to be, hey, you can see that you're in fitness, and we work with we're business coaches that work with personal trainers, and 10 times your results, and it's like, well, you've shown no. You've had no initiative to go out and actually learn about what we do and who we are. You've made an assumption based on one thing that we might do, or looks similar to something you're familiar with. And you're selling yourself as a business coach who's never actually run a business before, except for your business coaching business. Where's the lived experience? Where's the knowledge? Yeah, exactly. How can you teach me how to fail effectively so that I can move beyond that when you haven't actually had those wins and losses yourself, because you're out there pretending to be something that you've never built up to in the first place.
That's
it's
it.
just a persona. It's an image.
Yeah. And starting with that, for a lot of people, they've just got to start a business with virtually nothing.
Yeah.
When I say virtually nothing, we do live in a country where we are quite well supported. So, but a lot of the work that Wendy and I do is outside of Australia, and you see people that live in countries where they don't have such great welfare systems, don't have such great healthcare systems, and then you see some real entrepreneurship. You see some real resilience and incredible adaptability, because that's just it's almost like our safety nets are limiting.
Absolutely.
What's possible.
In some ways, I get excited when you talk about it, because I'm like, to me, that's the ultimate challenge. Like, that is, it's freeing you from all of that to go, well, here it is. There's a little bit of support available, but it's on you. Like, do you want to do this or not? Like, are you serious about it? Like, it really, yes, absolutely challenging, like suboptimal in terms of comfort levels and that kind of stuff. But what an exciting opportunity. I mean, I guess that's where I'm at now. Like, I might not have always been like that, but when you understand your ability to adapt and you have the skills to do that, you're like, cool, love that environment. Let's go.
Yeah.
Like, so what have you had those sort of feelings when you do that kind of work, or is it something that you've tried to go and utilize when you're coaching people in more affluent society?
In terms of, like, you just can't fail?
Well, there's
no option. We have to do something. I think for us, probably one of the times when we sort of, Wendy and I both have had that kind of experience was, you sort of, everything's going well. We've completed a project. We'd sent off an invoice. We expected a significant amount of money to be turning up in our bank account. We were in Vegas after travelling around the States. The money hadn't showed. No return airfares.
Oh, wow.
So, and look, I mean, our parents are fantastic. You know, I mean, we are, we're very privileged. If we rang up Wendy's parents or my parents, it would have been sorted like that. But you just don't want to do that. So, if you sort of take that, we just can't accept that this is the way we're gonna, we're gonna get out of this. And you say it's on us. We're just gonna make it happen. Then you just have to adapt, and you have to make do. So, it was basically dollar hot dogs and drinks in a casino somewhere. Getting by. It wasn't all on black or anything like that. And I think what we ended up doing, well, I know what we ended up doing. We ended up back in the day, we were making some good money out of webinars. So we recorded a webinar. Recorded all the promotional stuff for it in a hotel room, put it out there. The webinar wasn't going to be run till well and truly back in Adelaide. But, with webinars, the really great part about them is that you paid before you run the webinar. So we had enough money to get back.
Yeah.
We sold the webinar, 24 hours, we had enough money to pay for the flights back, and we got back, money turned up in the account, and everything turned out all right. But I mean, it's just taking that, hey, how am I going to get out of this? I didn't. And for us, it just would have been incredibly embarrassing ringing up and saying, hey, guess what? We went on holiday without the cash in the bank.
To celebrate the cash that's supposed to be in our bank account. Yeah.
So, it's just, if you take that, hey, I'm just not going to accept this. I'm not going to accept things the way they are. I'm just going to have to find a way out of this approach. And you're willing to, rather than just exercise that resilience and keep bashing your head against the wall if you're not breaking through, and find a different way around, you always will. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it would have been nicer to get the money. Like it's not. It's not the way you want to be living constantly. But you're always, if you're pushing yourself, you're always going to hit these ups and downs. So
it's often one of those things that you look back on later and go, I'm really grateful that happened. It's like, in the moment, you're like,
what would I talk about here if it hadn't?
Yeah, right. And like, I remember one day, and Ben and I were in the office, and we were we're trying to overcome a challenge or like reshape a direction. And I remember like just going, man, we are both frustrated right here. Like it's probably 4:30 now, but like we've been sort of slamming away at it for a couple of hours, and it's like, and I was like, okay, first of all, I'm actually really grateful to be frustrated right now, and that was huge for me. Like frustration has plagued me through a sporting career, like, and it's affected, you know, performances and results and how I feel about myself and how much I've enjoyed the process. And I was like, no, I'm grateful because it means that like we're at a fork in the road, like we're at an important moment. And what I've learned from that, like, yeah, okay, it's taken me 39 years, but it's like what I've learned from that is that when I get to this point, that the sunshine's just about to break through, like we're just about to hit something new and exciting. Let's just put a pause on it, go and freshen up and come back to it tomorrow morning. And sure enough, like we sort of, you know, hit the ground running. And I just, you know, those emotions, we put so much emphasis on. There is good emotions and bad emotions, and they're not, it's, all you need to do is go, okay, I'm noticing that I'm feeling this emotion. Is it helpful or unhelpful? If it's helpful, sweet, I can use it. It tells me something about myself. If it's not, well, let's go, okay, well, I need to make room for it. I can't just force it away. But I also know that, well, it's not useful to me right now. So what's the point of worrying about it? Like, you know, push on anyway, and then eventually it'll pass because it always does. So I just think, you know, and then you look back on those times, you're like, I'm really grateful I went through that because it was formative in my direction or where I am now. Which, you know, like whether that be that you met the right partner because of it, you ended up in a better community situation, you found the right, you know, person to work alongside. Like usually there's a silver lining, but we're so attached, like you were saying before, to what we thought it should have been or the way that it was, that we don't allow ourselves the opportunity to see what's possible.
And I think it's also, you know, just forming habits around when you do have those feelings, have those emotions. How do you react, and maybe changing the way you react and what you do around that. I mean, you know, I'm incredibly lucky. Wendy is one of the most hardworking people I've ever met. But when things do get tough, one thing that just happens is, I don't know, she just goes into gear and just digs in and goes twice as hard. You know, obviously not, you know, thinking about, you know, how we can make things happen. And yeah, and I think it really starts to rub off on the people she coaches. We did an innovation growth hack in Kadina last week, and you know, there was a lot of very new businesses there. They were kind of concepts turning up, some of them a little bit more established, but you know, on day two, basically everyone had either got leads or made sales.
Fantastic. So,
you know, new businesses that had sort of never really gone to market properly before. You know, actually making a sale on day two of something like that is just you know, it's just it's incredible to see. But I mean, the other thing is, it's just, you know, working with people that can actually you know, change your habits around how you react in those situations, and just get you more used to working at a different pace. Really can be life changing as well.
Yeah.
So.
Have you considered you might be actually working in mindset? Because what are you talking
Everyone
about?
is. Everyone is. You go back to plumbing, and you know, one of the things that you'll really kind of realise is, when you drill down and analyse what you have to do to help a customer make a good decision about the way they should move forward. For example, their hot water fails. It's an unexpected expense. It's a significant expense. And you know, it's incredibly uncomfortable, particularly if you've got young kids or, you know, elderly parents, whatever it might be in your house. And you know, there's no hot showers. You know, washing up becomes difficult. So you know, you've got a customer that's going, just do what you can, just do the cheapest thing you can. And realistically, the difference between you know, let's say you're looking at, you know, a couple of grand, you know, sort of $1,500 to $1,700 for something that's a good solution versus a real cheap solution. Back many years ago when I first started in plumbing, you know, it's just helping people, you know, change their mindset around that. What I found that in the early days, you know, when you weren't so aware of, you know, picking the customer up from where they were and helping them move to a better place, I'd turn up to a job, I'd quote a customer for a hot water replacement, for example. They would and ah, and then I would be back in the afternoon changing that hot water service over, as a subcontractor for someone that was working for the gas company, Sagasco at the time. And the customers paid 50% more, but they just didn't know what decision to make, and the person in the call centre was far better at helping them make that decision than me. Yeah. So, it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're talking to customers, if you're influencing customers, if you're helping people make better decisions, then, you're working in mindset. So just accept it and do what you can to do what you can to help your customers. I mean, if you're operating with integrity, you'll always be better off. People say, "Don't you feel like you're manipulating someone?" No, not really. I'm helping to make a better decision.
Yeah, and this has been a learning point for me particularly. So I won't speak from behalf of them, but authenticity and integrity are things that I hold really highly in terms of how I operate, because relationships are so important to me, right? So I want people to sort of trust that what they are interacting with, who they're talking to, is who they say they are, and therefore, because I like to experience that from them as well. And it's like, so when you go into a sales process, for me, it's been very hard to feel authentic, because it's like there's an outcome which I'm trying to achieve, albeit from a point of mutual benefit. But people are so used to being sold to that their initial, and I'm like this, like if someone tries to sell to me, my guard's up. It's like, whoa, I know those tools, I know those tricks, and you're using them on me. And I don't want it to be tools and tricks. I just want it to be an authentic process of like, okay, can we agree this is the outcome we're trying to achieve? This is how I'm going to help you get there. And so then it's offering things in a way that are less threatening, more supportive, and but ultimately trying to get us both to that point that says, well, you get the hot water system that's going to last you, not the one that's going to save you $250.
Yeah.
Because that's actually what's going to be the best thing for you. And it actually doesn't make that much difference to me. It just means that you'll trust me more, because it's not going to, go to the poopers on you in a couple of years' time when you think that you've got it for the next 10 years. So,
but if you can't get over yourself in terms of, I don't feel authentic when I'm talking to them. I don't feel, if you can't get over yourself and understand that you need to be the person, because you're going to influence them well if you're operating with integrity. Effectively they'll pay 50% more for the cheap. So that's the lesson I learned. They'll pay 50% more by going through a call centre somewhere and buying that unit from someone who doesn't know. They've read the brochures and all the rest of it. And you look at it, even you look at Choice magazine and you go, this has got some great recommendations in here. But when you know a product inside out, you'd see what they recommend and you go, how did you come up with this? So I rang up Choice one day and I said, okay, how did you come up with this? Oh, we can't buy 6 or 8 hot water services and test them, so we just went off their brochures.
Yeah, wow. Okay.
And the trouble is, if you don't adapt and you don't think about your process and your sales process, if you're operating with integrity and you're selling customers what's going to benefit them and they're going to get more value from you than what they spend with you. For example, if you're selling a $1,000 product, then if they're going to get more than $1,000 value, then if you can't get over yourself in terms of, I don't want to sell, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, and you don't benefit.
Yeah.
You're doing them a disservice.
No, it's a lesson I'm still learning, but like I'm getting better at it and letting go of that attachment to that idea of it is or it isn't authentic. It's like, well, no, that's how I'm living, and this is how I'll express it. But the choice thing's funny, and it's maybe a little bit off track, but like I was a member of them for 15 plus years, and they were very helpful in a number of areas. But I remember once buying a washing machine and it broke down shortly afterwards, and I was like, it was a top rated washing machine on Choice, right? And and I like to go very personal with service people. If you're going to bring someone in that's going to repair stuff, I don't want to go through a big company. I want someone that's running their own business and shop local and that kind of stuff, right? So I got these fellas come in and I said, mate, what? I bought the one that was supposed to be the good recommendation supposed to last me. And he's like, no, mate. He goes, these are this brand is terrible for durability. And he goes, when it comes to repair, he goes, as long as they don't break down, they're fine. But as soon as they break down, they're an absolute nightmare to repair. You can't get parts. He's like, yeah. And so I was like, well, what is it that you'd recommend? He's like, well, this brand and this brand. And I was like, he goes, we deal heaps with them. They're easy to repair. They got great warranty processes. And they rarely break down. And I was like, well, wouldn't that make more sense? Instead of going to a magazine to go, I'm going to pick a product from there, ring up the service crew and go, what do you deal with? Like, what are you actually experiencing? Like, if you want to buy a car, go and talk to a mechanic that works on repairing cars. Don't go and talk to the Jeep dealer. I'm saying Jeep because Ben's just bought a Jeep. Secondhand, so, but hopefully he's got it all checked out. Because obviously they've got a conflict of interest in what they're going to tell you. So go and ask the people that repair them and go, well, if I'm going to bring this to you to get service regularly, how happy are you going to be about doing that? How happy am I going to be about the bill?
That's it.
It's sort of testing something within.
Something.
Yeah,
with someone that knows rather than someone that doesn't. So just coming back to that too, being your authentic self. I think the other thing we really need to drill down on and realise is that. We are multifaceted, and your authentic self when you're coaching and mentoring is, just because you're not somebody else in a different situation doesn't mean you're not authentic. And this is where a lot of people get hung up on the whole sales process as well. If you're selling to a customer, if you're advising a customer, if you're coaching, you have to be who you need to be for that person at that time.
Sure.
If you think about. Probably the most extreme example is if you think about someone that if you think about your intimate partner, who you are when you're alone with them, it's just inappropriate to be like that outside of that location.
That's one way of putting it.
It's it. It's like, I remember when the kids were young, Mum, and just go and put your arm around your wife or give her a kiss or something. It's like, no PDAs, no public displays of affection.
Right.
So but you can't be.
Yeah.
That if you look at all the facets of yourself, it helps you survive. It helps you be the best you. It helps you be the most value to you, to your customers and all the people in your life. But it's not. You're not you. You can't put you into a box and say, okay, if I pick Dan at this particular point in time, Dan, the podcast guy, it's different to Dan. If you were doing some personal training with me, the conversation wouldn't be going like this.
Yeah.
It probably would be you more telling me more than me, or advising rather than my input so much. Because I don't think we've burn off as many calories in this session. Yeah. As if, you know what I mean? We need to realise that we are multifaceted.
Yeah.
Who we need to be at different points in our life.
Yeah.
Who we need to be when we're in conflict with perhaps a supplier that's sold your washing machine that's failed, or who we need to be when we're negotiating for a second hand or a new Jeep, or we just need to be different people at different times, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And don't get hung up on being
fair.
authentic.
I think it probably just needs redefining, doesn't it, in terms of what it is. Like, instead of holding so strongly to one version of what authenticity means, it's more just to be about acknowledging that is part of you, and that in some ways it is contextual, without being a chameleon, which is where you're pretending to be something for someone. Yeah. You're actually just in that situation. That's who you are, and that's who you need to be, rather than putting on this different sort of mask to pretend to be the thing you think the customer wants or the person you're talking with. Because to me, there's definitely a difference, but at the same time, I think talking about it in context, there's authenticity is contextual in terms of where you are and who you're talking to and the situation makes a lot of sense.
That's it. And even the same person, even coaching, sometimes you need to be, encouraging, and other times you need to be like, hold people to account. So it's, and the same version of Scott doesn't work in both situations. Yeah. So,
the soft and
it's
nurturing
about which, and
okay.
that's kind of what you need to do to get the results that people need. So, you'd be doing them a disservice to try and put yourself in a box and say authentic is this.
Yeah, that's good. I like it. And another word that's come up for us a lot recently is conviction. And I think when you contextualise authenticity in different situations, it's more about having conviction, because then it's about, well, I'm confident in. So, for example, if we try and explain this for the audience, is that if we are in a situation and you have been very supportive and nurturing because that's what we needed, But then we got to a point in the process where we weren't following through on actions we said we were going to, which would deliver us the vision that we said that we were working towards.
Which you will achieve, yeah.
Yeah, right, thank you. I love that language too, the manifesting language. It's another conversation. Is that, you need to have the conviction to be able to say to me, Dan, that's BS. Like, you say that you want this, but your actions aren't in line with that. I'm here to support you. I need to tell you now that this isn't going to get you there.
And it's also it's realising who you are to that person. And if you take a coaching role, then you need to. That conviction is really important. If you go, okay, well, the most important thing to me is the success of the adaptability movement. That's the most important thing. If Dan likes me, that's high up there, but it's really not as important. It's really not as important as ensuring your success. And if it's like, well, if it's uncomfortable, well, so be it. You'll probably come back to liking me later on. But if you don't, and you're successful, and you're out there, because I think what you guys do is really important. We drilled down on that some weeks ago, and I just remember thinking, for all those parents who are out there supporting kids and trying to encourage them to do well in whatever it would be, music, academic studies, sport, they're going to come across challenges, and just having that conversation about the higher level that those kids achieve, the
greater the risk
fall,
of falling.
And if you're encouraging anyone in your life to do well, and you're not concerned or taking action or making sure that there are tools in place to make sure that they are resilient and they are adaptable, then it's like jumping in the car with no seatbelt on. So I think that's really important, and really, I hope you like me, but
sitting inches across from you in front of a camera. So,
but it's more important to me that you're successful in your business, and if we've got to have an uncomfortable
But I don't think the two are
conversation.
mutually exclusive.
No,
I think,
they are for some people though. Some people don't take it particularly well, and it's like, well, that's fine.
To me, that's part of the growth process. It's about opening yourself up to going, what do I really want? Do I want to improve, or do I want to feel comfortable all the time? And it's a hard thing to feel comfortable all the time anyway, but if you're trying to escape discomfort, well, you're not going to get where you want to go. And so we can deliver a message in a compassionate way, but still help keep someone accountable to the thing that they say they want to achieve. To me, there is no greater level of care. And I know that when I give that feedback to other people, sometimes that can come across as brash or direct or uncomfortable. But I'm a bit like you. I'm like, I'd rather they know that I care than that I'd pissed in their pocket and what didn't actually help them, move past the thing that was limiting them. And so, okay, sure, there's some people that probably will go, actually, Dan's a bit much for me sometimes, or that I don't want to spend as much time with him. I'm like, well, that's okay, I have to accept that, because my relationships are infinitely greater for being willing to do that, because the people I do that with, they really value me that same way as I value them for reciprocating or for adding something else to my life.
And that comfort thing, I think, that you talked about before, I think we've got to realise that you're only going to be comfortable while you're moving. You can stay still for a while.
Yeah.
But even if you think about it, like, let's say you put your head on the pillow tonight, you find the most comfortable position, whatever that might be for you, your side, your back, whatever. But you can only lay there for so long before you need to.
Absolutely, that's a really good way of putting it. I've got a great first-hand example at the moment. I'm trying to learn both how to swim in the ocean and also to ski paddle in the ocean. And the golden rule of ski paddling is that when you never have your paddle out of the water. So if you've always got to have it touching, because otherwise you're going to probably tip over, right? And so the whole thing about that is like, being still is not an option. If you're, yes, you could feather the water, but you're going to be really uncomfortable while you're trying to feather the water. As soon as you start moving, you'll feel better again, and you'll feel like you've got more stability and stuff. And yes, there's a risk of falling, but it's part of learning. The quicker we get over that and move past that, the quicker we won't fall in or fall in less. But it's
and if you stay still, you're going to fall in. It's just
exactly. And it's not,
same as on a bike.
It's not satisfying.
Bike,
Like not everyone who's got that type A driven personality type. And that's okay, because whatever your personality type is, and we often try and help people identify really early on whether they have a tendency to fight, flight, or freeze. And without being emotional about any of those things and saying any of one's better than others, because are they helpful or not in that situation? Sometimes, yeah, it's a good idea to get the hell out of there. Sometimes it's a good idea to wait before you make a decision. Sometimes you just need to bury through, or use that in a way that helps you persist. But each of them can be useful, but you need to know what your bias is, because if you are going into a situation you don't, and you have an emotional response to that rather than being able to ground yourself first, you're probably not going to be satisfied with the outcome. Because it's not coming from a logical, pragmatic point of view. It's coming from an urge, a sense of I need to escape, I need to stop, I need to attack, kind of thing. So I think it's so important to have that ability to look inwards, to be somewhat more self-aware. Again, it's going to come with some discomfort early on, because we grow up in a society that conditions you to sort of fit in and be the same, and yet our greatest value comes through our uniqueness. We don't sit in this room if we're exactly the same, because what do we have to learn in each other? There's no point in jumping in front of a camera. We'd be just sitting there slapping each other on the back, telling each other how great a blokes we are.
That's it. Yeah.
But because you've had a different experience to what I've had, and because we value each other's ability to sort of communicate and share that, here we are having an experience and sharing that with others.
And it's just just perspectives and different ways you might be able to, because not everyone's going to receive the information from you the same way either. So just talking to somebody else and going, okay, well that's how Dan presents that. The paddleboard example. That's like, well that's okay. That's good. That's just given me a whole heap more tools and different ways I could present things to. Made me think of a bicycle too. I mean, like you jump on a bike. It's like you try and stand there. Stay upright on a bike that's not moving. You're in all sorts of a world of pain. Yeah. So, I mean, you can. I mean, I've seen people do it at the traffic lights, and it's very impressive. But it's not. No doubt, it's not comfortable. So, so just having those conversations, learning different ways, how other people see it, and okay, well, if someone's not receiving the information from me in that way, I can now perhaps. Use Dan's example. You know what I mean? So,
I think that's great. And I think to me, that's like one of the greatest things I've learned out of coaching is there's not just one way. In fact, there's infinite ways of doing things. And to give context to that, it's like if I have an image or a feeling in my body of how I do something, and I share that with you, but you've got no context around what that is, and it doesn't make any sense to you. Well, then I can't just keep slamming that same thing into you and go, no, you've got to do it like this. You've got to feel this. And it's like, if you've never felt that before, I need to help you understand that, help you experience that. So I like kinesthetic means to feel something. I like to try and help someone feel something as quickly as possible, and use different ways of communicating that. So whether it be verbal or non-verbal, whether it be through pictures or sound or whatever it is, to help convey that picture, that feeling in my body into yours as quickly as possible to be able to execute what you want to do. So whether that's a mindset we're teaching, whether it's trying to do a Romanian deadlift, the principle is the same. Is you need to have tools within your toolkit to be able to communicate in different ways, so that you can receive the thing that I'm trying to transmit in a way that makes sense to you.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I mean, it's missed so often in pitching your business idea, in trying to influence somebody. It's the number one thing. People have got a way that they want to present something. And they think it's clever, or they think it's unique, or they think it's interesting, but it's just...
I love observing, going along to those pitch nights or somewhere, and you can see the difference in someone that's so narrowly it has to be this way, as opposed to someone that's able to read the audience and be able to sort of tailor that message in a way that it's better received. Because especially when panic creeps in, we talked about the fight, flight and freeze, when someone is in that situation, they are very narrowly focused, and they might have some self-awareness that it's not working, oftentimes that has drilled down harder on the same thing. I'm not saying it loud enough, I'm not saying it enough, I'm not, and it's like, no, you're literally digging a hole.
Once you move into that space, it's really dangerous territory. Because if you're presenting well, I'd suggest you'd be at about the 120 odd word a minute mark.
Yeah, I have a tendency to go a little bit too fast.
Yeah, but if you read... people generally read between 800 and 1,500 words a minute. So they'll prepare something, read it, and go, I read that in 4 minutes, and I've got a 5-minute presentation. If I stumble across a word, I'm fine. But they don't realise that, they've read it at a phenomenal rate. There's no way you can speak at that pace.
No,
no way. If you're thinking, you're probably up around that. You could be up around the 1,500 words a minute. Okay. So, maybe more.
That's really interesting.
Because you're thinking concepts. So you're presenting at 120 words a minute, all of a sudden, you know, your mind is 10 times where you're at down the road, and you're starting to think of all the things you should add, you should delete, you could, you know, it's just, it just.
You got to. This is another one though. To me, public speaking, some people just look at you and go, "Oh, I wish I could do that." It's like, hang on a sec, you didn't see me when I was 14, right? Like you didn't see me again at 19 and 21 and 23 or something, right? Like it's practice. Like it's literally, it's just a skill. It's a tool. So yes, some people are more comfortable being uncomfortable. Like in terms of like, I still get nervous getting in front of people. Like I feel that nervous energy creep in. I'll communicate that Ben, and Ben's like, what are you worrying about? Like, you good at this? I'm like, yeah, but I care about it. And that's what makes me, so that nervous energy comes up, because I know that it's going to be an experience. I want it to be a great experience for the audience, which will make it a good experience for me.
And if you do, sometimes, again, that's like, it's another area of where people say, oh, I'm not authentic unless I stand up there and talk off the cuff. But
you got to know what works for you. But if you're going to read from notes, to me, there's some golden rules. First of all, like write it like you want to read it.
Yeah.
So don't write it in 12-point font so that you can get everything on one page, and you know, you don't separate your paragraphs, or you have to go into written paragraph form. Like to me, when I have done that before, and I haven't done it many times, thankfully, I've literally put breathe or ... to space things out, because if you don't, you'll read it as it is in a panic state, right? And the amount of times, like I remember going into one job interview, and I was like, oh no, I'm going to be prepared and have notes this time. Big mistake. Yeah. I'm not a notes person, and those notes weren't helpful, because then you panic trying to find them, so you lose all your conviction. And so, to me, you need to test it. You need to practice it, and so that means, okay, you might hate the sound or dislike the sound of your own voice. Too bad. You're about to go out and speak to 100 people in a room. You need to get comfortable with that. So grab we've all got a smartphone. Fortunately, unfortunately. So just put on the recorder, and play it out, and then you'll know about your tempo and your rate, and you'll be able to listen back and go, I didn't like that, and I'll change that, and I need to put a breath there. That's me. Like when enthusiasm creeps in, I try and sort of accelerate a little bit. It's not for everyone. So trying to be self-aware enough that I can slow down and pause and leave some space, and I'm even conscious I haven't done it very well this podcast.
But I think it's one of those things. It's like you know, that authenticity, people say, oh, if I speak, you know, if I go out there, I'm going to speak off the cuff because I want to be authentic. But again, it's like, who do you need to be for that audience? You need to be prepared. You've got a very tight, you know, brief often. You know, you've often only got a few minutes, so you have to be the person
have
that
like
prepares.
a theme and have some points, because I think you need. If that panic state does creep in, then at least you go, I know what's next. I know what to bring it back to.
And you should know your topic well enough to be able to do it off top points anyway.
For sure.
If you can't, then. But you know, again, I don't want to practice because I want to be authentic on the day. So we'll
that's
practice,
a terrible idea.
Practice to actually get your message refined and down to. I mean, you wouldn't do it in any other, you know, like in sport.
It's not a word for word thing. It's more the tempo, the time, the impact you want to have. What did that sound like? Did it sound the way I thought I wanted it to communicate it? Yeah.
And it's very much about that. You know, you know, if being prepared and being, you know, well practiced and polished is the person you want to be, then do it. Be authentic that way, not necessarily off the cuff. You know, so awesome. but it's okay to give yourself permission to do that. You know, it's okay to be who you need to be for that audience. So I suppose that's
awesome. Yeah. So I'm going to try and summarise some of what we talked about today to make it useful to people.
Good luck.
So, we've talked about. Let's start with the authenticity one. We've talked about sort of that contextual authenticity, about who you need to be in that situation for that person, and how that's different from, trying to anticipate and be something different than who you really are, but there's different versions of you that need to be in a different situation. We've talked about attachment, about not sort of holding on too tightly to an idea of how something should be, because if it's going to limit you and actually progress into what you could be and what you want to be, then what's the point? Like, let's be a little bit sort of softer and more forgiving with that. We've talked a lot about the common kind of misconceptions about what it is to be an entrepreneur and how to run a business, and how you're going to need to embrace discomfort and failure, and that's a good thing. As you persist through that, and as you become more adaptable, you'll learn the value of that and why that is, in our opinion, far more satisfying than just going to work for someone else. What else was there? I mean, communication.
If you're
obviously
thinking about
came
going
up.
into business because you don't want a boss,
Yeah,
realise you're going to have
yeah.
more bosses than
Yes, I
you'll
think
ever.
so.
Yeah, take that one
Yeah,
away.
you've got to be willing to open yourself up to new learnings, growth, and failure. And again, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think you just got to make sure you're ready for that. And yeah, there might be a different entry point for each person. So, like, I think that's been hugely valuable. Thank you. Before we finish up, I just want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about how people can engage with you and how easy that can actually be through what you're doing with Cedar Valley Startups as well as Switch Start Scale, because it's a lot of it is supported by government funding, which opens things up a bit. Like I know, for example, we're on the NICE program. That's allowed us to access some different sort of help with building the business. Is Cedar Valley Startups, can you do that in parallel with NICE, or is that part of the NICE as well?
Of course. It's all funded by Department of Employment and Workplace Relations, so Workforce Australia. And really the colleagues from Workforce, they come out to our Kadena event and they just want people to do well.
Cool.
That's the reason they fund these programs. They want people to do well, they want people to contribute, and live their best lives. So, obviously there's a little bit of accountability there being on those programs, which is fair. I mean, they're making a small investment in your business effectively. But I suppose the best way to get involved is come along to the networking events.
Yeah.
So if you want to jump onto the Cedar Valley Startups website, if you're in Barossa, Mid-North or York Peninsula, or the Switch Start Scale website if you're in Adelaide, or around the world, doesn't matter. We get a lot of people join us from all different places through our Workforce Blueprint brand. But if you come along to the networking events, then you'll get to meet people. You and Ben are there at many of them, so they'll get to talk about adaptability and
And you like, it becomes like, I think when you first go to those things, you're like, where do I even start? Like, I don't know who to talk to, and you sort of just sit there. Sometimes you sit there waiting for an opportunity, but you turn up to more and you notice that there's some common themes in terms of the people that come around, and you guys are very engaging, and it's a great place to start, like just to get yourself out there and to learn. Because you're basically practicing your pitch for a start, your elevator pitch, and that's one of the hardest things you can do in business.
Yeah.
So
you're getting feedback.
Yeah,
you're seeing who's engaging, who's not.
Exactly, and you're noticing what other people are doing in that situation as well, and their discomfort, which you could talk about or use for context and stuff as well. So it's absolutely a great place to start. So Switch Start Scale website, we can find those details.
You can either jump on
Cedar Valley.
join the mailing lists. You can you can go to Cedar Valley Startups or Switch Start Scale and book a one-on-one. That can be online. It can be a face-to-face at Grange Road down here.
Yeah.
If you've got a business idea, business that you're looking to launch, any support you need, just get in touch and let us know what you're kind of looking for, and we'll do what we can to support you or connect you to those that can.
Yeah, brilliant. And look, we, as a business, we'd highly recommend that. Like, it's been helpful for us to be able to access this sort of service, but also the care that you've offered us, and willingness to come and jump on our podcast and give us a bit of honest feedback, and so we're not too comfortable in what we're doing. But in all honesty, like, I think it's a great opportunity for people to sort of help guide them, because we say in our business, we're guides and facilitators. Like, it's not about being we have all the answers and here's your one-page summary of what you need to do now. It's just about facilitating that person's growth and helping guide them a little bit because of your lived experience, as well as the academic resource you have available, to be able to support and make that transition for them a little bit easier than what otherwise would have been.
And the connections, like you go to networking events, you meet more people, we meet more people.
Yeah. It's that abundance mindset.
What we offer might not be right for somebody. They might be after some very specific advice around their industry sector or around their product or their service. So it's about trying to get those connections so that you can offer a much more comprehensive service or help people. If you can direct people to the right place, then they'll probably end up with you at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I agree. Awesome. Scott, it's been terrific. Thank you.
Yeah, you too, mate.
Everything.
I appreciate it as well. It's great.
Awesome. Yeah. All right.